So, Doctrine and Covenants, sections 6, 8, and 9 are full of keys and secrets to revelation that God gave to Oliver Cowdery through the prophet Joseph Smith. So, let's talk about a few of them. One of the major things is to, if you want revelation, is to seek for it, to desire it. So, for example, in section 6, verses 7 and 8, it says, "Seek not for riches, but for wisdom." So you should seek for the wisdom. "And behold, the mysteries of God shall be unfolded unto you." Later on in verse 8, it says, "Verily I say unto you, even as you desire of me, so shall it be unto you." In verse 20, in this same section, it says, "Behold, thou art Oliver, and I have spoken unto thee because of thy desires. Therefore treasure up these words in thy heart." And again in verse 27, "And now I command you that if you have good desires, a desire to lay up treasures for yourself in heaven, then you shall assist in bringing to light with your gift those parts of my scriptures which have been hidden because of iniquity." So first tip, desire it. The second tip for revelation is to ask God for revelation. So in verse 11 here, it says, "And if thou wilt inquire, thou shalt know the mysteries which are great and marvelous. Therefore thou shalt exercise thy gift." So you have to inquire for it. You have to ask for it. Later on in verse 14, it says, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, blessed art thou for what thou hast done, for thou hast inquired of me. And behold, as often as thou hast inquired, thou hast received instruction of my spirit." So you got to ask for it. This also shows up in section 8. Verse 1, it says, "Oliver Cowdery, verily, verily, I say unto you, that as surely as the Lord liveth, who is your God and your Redeemer, even so surely shall you receive a knowledge of whatsoever things ye shall ask in faith, with an honest heart, and believing that ye shall receive a knowledge." So you should ask. And that also happens in verse 9. It says, "And therefore whatsoever ye shall ask me to tell you by that means, that will I grant unto you, and you shall have knowledge concerning it." And in verse 11, "Ask that you may know the mysteries of God, and that you may translate and receive a knowledge." So you should ask for revelation. Another important thing that God points out about revelation is that you shouldn't treat it casually. You shouldn't trifle with it. So, for example, in section 6, verse 12, it says, "Make not thy gift known unto any, save it be those who are of thy faith. Trifle not with sacred things." And the experience that Joseph has with Martin Harris has a similar lesson, to not treat revelation casually. Another more subtle lesson is that revelation can come subtly. You might not always realize when you are being guided by God. So in verse 14, it says, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, blessed art thou, for what thou hast done, for thou hast inquired of me, and behold, as often as thou hast inquired, thou hast received instruction of my spirit. If it had not been so, thou wouldst not have come to the place where thou art at this time." So Oliver kind of had to be convinced that he was receiving instruction of the Spirit. He was asking for a witness from God that these things were true. And God's saying, "Yeah, I've been guiding you, but you might not have noticed it. But you wouldn't have come to this place if I hadn't been." So you can be guided subtly without really realizing it. Another important thing, I think, to acknowledge is that revelation is a gift. In section 8, verse 8, it says, "Therefore doubt not, for it is the gift of God, and you shall hold it in your hands and do marvelous works, and no power shall be able to take it away out of your hands, for it is the work of God." Revelation comes from God. It isn't like a chemical process that you get it just by doing things. It's something that God chooses to give to you. With God's agency. He chooses it, not you. Another thing, he talks a lot about how revelation can feel. In section 6, verse 15, he talks about enlightening thy mind. It can feel like he's enlightening your mind. It can also feel like peace in verse 23 of section 6, if it will focus. "Did I not speak peace to your mind concerning the matter? What greater witness can you have than from God?" And then also in In section 8, verse 2, it says, "Behold, I will tell you in your mind and in your heart by the Holy Ghost, which shall come upon you and shall dwell upon your heart." So it can come to your mind and it can come to your heart. And then in section 9, verse 8, it says, "But behold, I say unto you that you must study it out in your mind, and then you must ask me if it be right. And if it is right, I will cause that your bosom shall burn within you, and you shall feel that it is right." So lots of things about how revelation feels. It comes to the mind and your heart. It can feel like a burning in the bosom. It can feel like peace. It can feel like an enlightening in your mind. And then also this verse right here talks about that you need to study it out too. You need to do some work as well on your part. It's not just asking. It's asking and trying and actually wanting it and acting in faith to get it. And then finally, something that comes out in lots of it is to act in faith and not to have fear. Revelation, getting knowledge from God, doesn't get rid of the requirement that we have to act according to our desires, that God is real and that God is communicating with us, and to act in faith. So perhaps acting without seeing and in spite of fears. So for example, he said, Oliver is chastised for fearing. That was a barrier for him receiving revelation in the past. Talks about how he should be faithful. But this is a common theme throughout all of these sections. Like in verse 10 of section 8 says, "Remember that without faith you can do nothing." Again, it says, "Trifle not with these things. Ask not for that which you ought not. Ask that you may know the mysteries of God." So treat it, ask in faith, and don't be fearful is something that is common as well. So those are just lots of tips for revelation that God gave to Oliver Cowdery through the prophet Joseph Smith, and I think that they're very applicable to us in our lives as well.